Suzuki shocked the motorcycle industry when they announced they would be releasing a new and improved version of the venerable DR-Z400 with a carburetor, 5-speed gearbox, and design language straight out of 2000. The DR-Z was about 20 years past due for a revamp. With so much time passing, it was assumed that they'd just run the DR-Z until the heat death of the universe. People thought it was going to be aged out like a dinosaur. Suzuki officially announced the DR-Z's long-awaited successor, the DR-Z4S, last year, and Suzuki Simps and dual sport savants were both equally stumped. The DR-Z4S, also made in the SM Supermoto configuration, while touted as a new model, is merely a Suzuki bold new graphics update in a bit of a nutshell. The elements that are improved are nearly identical as the previous model, and the things that are totally new feel unnecessary, with many pain points of the original DR-Z left untouched. The engine that's being advertised as brand new uses the same design, displacement, and bore and stroke, all resulting in nearly identical power output. By new, they basically mean they created new manufacturing casts. They also committed the cardinal sin of keeping the 5-speed gearbox. You gotta be kidding me, Suzuki. That's been a big complaint of DR-Z owners for the last 25 years and has basically ensured this motorcycle is gonna feel outdated. The DR-Z4S did finally get fuel injection though. Wow, impressive! And with it came some switchable ride modes that you probably don't need on a sub 40 horsepower dual sport, but I will say the new styling looks pretty sharp and fits the family of bikes they have. But also, they could have done just about anything with this bike and it would have looked better than the outgoing DR-Z400. Look, not every updated motorcycle needs to be bigger, more powerful, or more technologically advanced, but if it's not, it needs to be priced accordingly. The new DR-Z4S has an MSRP of $9,000. By comparison, the KTM 390 SMCR and 390 Enduro both make more power, have 6 gears, a more comprehensive tech package, and cost $5,500. The DR-Z4 was outdated the moment that it launched. Just like that one couple in your hometown bar, Suzuki completely peaked in the early 2000s and it cannot move past its glory days. Eric Buell Racing produced the EBR 1190 RX in 2014 using an 1190cc liquid-cooled V-twin that made 185 horsepower and 102 foot-pounds of torque. In 2025, the Buell Hammerhead 1190 is sold using an 1190cc liquid-cooled V-twin that makes 185 horsepower and 102 foot-pounds of torque. If you're being nice, you could say that the Hammerhead is the spiritual successor to the 1190 RX. If you're being honest, you could say it's a carbon copy. We were all a little excited when we heard Buell was making a resurgence. An American-made superbike? Sounds pretty sweet, right? Well, we all pretty quickly realized that the people who bought the Buell name and all the existing design elements are a lot better at marketing than they are at engineering. Now look, I don't mean to punch down, but is it fair to give Buell a pass because they're a small boutique motorcycle company? That doesn't feel right. I rode the Hammerhead a few years back, and while there is something novel about a raw analog V-twin superbike in the modern era, it just doesn't warrant the $18,000 starting price tag when it's entirely a design from 2014. Even looking at the two bikes side to side, they're clearly the exact same. Same frame, same engine, same exhaust, same suspension, same perimeter brakes. Look, Buell may be long separated from Harley-Davidson, but they seem to be operating with the same business model. Yesterday's technology at tomorrow's pricing. The 650 class is the best it's ever been. We of course have bikes like the MT-07, R7, and the new GSX-R and 8S, and the new Hornet 750, maybe even more spicy offerings like the RS660 and Tuono 660. These bikes have fun, modern engines, balanced ergonomics, and competitive pricing. They're great options for the intermediate rider, whether you want to be an urban naked bike hooligan or a canyon carving sport bike Chad who was born too late to care about inline 4 600s. But despite all of this, Kawasaki shamelessly shills the Ninja 650 and Z650 to hapless wannabe Kyles who are too coked out on Monster Energy to be able to read a damn spec sheet and realize they're getting taken for a ride. The 649cc parallel twin found in these bikes has more or less been the same since 2006, kind of pulling a Suzuki if you ask me. It is this engine in particular that makes inline-4 devotees loathe the parallel twin platform. The 180-degree crank engine makes pretty decent power for its size, but it's so tired and so uninspiring that it still conjures up images of straight-piped lawnmowers every time you hit the ignition switch. The Ninja and Z650 have seen some styling updates, I'll give you that, and a new TFT dash, but at their core, they're still the same plain commuter bikes that Kawasaki's been hawking to wannabe squids for the greater part of 2 decades. Riding Kawasaki's 650 class bikes is like hooking up with your ex when you're home for the holidays. Sure, it beats taking your iPhone to the bathroom, but you can do better, and you should, and you know it. We might be talking about outdated motorcycles in this video, but do you know what else is outdated? A traditional motorcycle insurance policy. Look, we all need insurance on our bikes, but you want to have the right insurance. If you're a weekend warrior, a track rider, or you're just a fair weather cruiser, you're probably massively overpaying for your motorcycle insurance right now. Traditional insurance companies think we're all going to be doing a minimum of 10,000 miles a year, commuting to work in dense rush hour traffic. But in reality, your bike is probably parked all week, nestled safely in the garage. And that's where Voom Insurance actually comes in. We've worked with Voom for a few years now, and they do a ton of work to keep motorcycling affordable and accessible for many riders. Voom is the only pay-per-mile motorcycle insurance, meaning you only pay for what you use. That's it. If you rack up a couple thousand miles a year, you can be saving up to 60% compared to traditional insurance. Some riders paying as little as $50 a year. And if you've gotten quotes on sport bikes from other companies before, you know they can be pretty spicy. So if you're dead set on that R7 or a new R9 or a Panigale V2, get a free quote from Voom and see how much you could save. Go to VoomInsurance.com/YammyNoob or hit the link below to get a quote that actually makes sense for how you ride. Thanks so much to Voom for the support on today's video. Let's get back into it. And since we're dunking on Kawasaki, we might just get this over with. The Versys 300 might be even more outdated than the Ninja 650. Small displacement adventure or sport touring bikes are a dime a dozen right now. The formula is pretty simple. Make a bike that's approachable, affordable, and capable of doing different types of riding. But amongst all of the competition, the Versys 300 just feels ancient. The Versys 300 uses the 296cc parallel twin from the Ninja 300, a bike that's been out of production in the US since 2018. The small displacement Ninja has been updated twice, first to the 400, then to the 500, but the same can't be said for the Versys. Meanwhile, there's the Himalayan 450, 390 Adventure, the Ibex 450, the NX 500, and the upcoming F450 GS. And the Versys is just picking its nose in the back of the classroom, anticipating being held back another grade while its classmates move on to middle school. It's not looking good. Kawasaki can seemingly make supercharged bikes, hydrogen-powered bikes, hybrid bikes, and whatever the hell that robot horse thing was at the drop of a hat, but they've just been coasting with the Versys 300 for far too long. They're supposed to be releasing a new KLE 500 that will hypothetically supplant both the Versys and the KLR, but I guess we're gonna have to wait and see. But considering the KLE 500 was already a Kawasaki model from the 90s and 2000s, maybe it's gonna be as underwhelming as another reboot a la Suzuki's DR-Z4S. When a bike is discontinued in Europe but still being sold in the US, you know it's outdated. Not just because of tighter emissions regulations, but because of the discerning taste of the European rider. You've got the Ducatis, the Aprilias, maybe even an MV Agusta for the financially engorged. Amidst these stellar Italian beauties, there are bikes that just no longer satisfy the palate of the sensible Euro boy, and those would be the GSX-R600 and 750. Look, maybe Euro squids still bust a nut over these bikes like American degens do, but the fact that they're discontinued across the pond is just another indicator that they're outdated. Although we don't need to get into geopolitics right now to get the gist of it. Suzuki Supersport and Supersport Plus motorcycles last saw their significant updates back when Obama was still in office and Kanye West still identified as an African American. In the wake of all the Panigale content on this channel, we've been inundated with the Supersport Japanese simps who are doing Olympic levels of mental gymnastics to make the case that their 15-year-old GSX-R is not only a superior machine, but better in every way. Not only is that wrong, it's just not even a direct comparison. These bikes use high-strung inline fours, cable throttles, no ABS, no TC, just raw Japanese sport bike DNA. A beautiful slice of tuna, if you will. Which is fine. One could argue that there's something even novel about that, but at the same time, there are Japanese sport bikes that are incredibly powerful with razor-sharp handling, but also outfitted with features that make the bikes safer and oftentimes more enjoyable to ride. Looking at that brand new R9. The 600 and 750s are as outdated as the Nintendo GameCube, but you can't even play Super Smash Bros. On them anymore. Listen, the traditional Japanese Supersport is kind of a dying breed. Even Honda's CBR-600RR is still a decade in the past. It got a decent little update a few years back with a fly-by-wire throttle, new electronics, and a TFT dash, but that's only sold in Europe and Japan. For some reason in the US, Honda still sells the previous iteration, which could potentially be kind of confusing for someone that happened to be in the market for a 600. Why you'd have to do any cross-shopping, I'm unsure, when we all know the R6 is the best 600 ever made, and there is no other motorcycle you should consider spending your money on, ever. Manufacturers should just give up. The pinnacle of performance has been reached and it's all downhill from here. No reason to try at all. R6 did it. It was best. That's what you people sound like. The CBR-600RR is the same story as the GSX-R600. At one point, it was the perfect representation of a Japanese supersport performance. Powerful 600cc engine, sporty suspension, aggressive ergonomics, but then society collectively decided, a few dense sport bike alphas notwithstanding, that we don't want or really need that anymore. Now it's just kind of hanging around still, haunting Honda dealership floors like the ghost of 2010. While I certainly don't want to give ZS6R people too much credit, but if one were to find themselves in the destitute position of wanting a 600 for the street, a ZX6R over a GSX-R600 or a CBR-600RR is the obvious choice, with the risk of a blown out bottom end notwithstanding, of course. It has at least kept up with the times in terms of tech and features. The CBR-600 is just like a 40-year-old guy who still walks around in his Letterman jacket saying stuff like, if coach had put me in the fourth quarter, we could have been state champs. I hear it all the time. Yami hates Suzukis. He thinks Hondas are dorky, and he thinks Kawasaki's are motorcycles for adults with teenager brains. He never says anything bad about Yamaha because he's on Yamaha's payroll. And while that may all be true, I still gotta call him like I see him, even in regards to Team Blue. Even if the Yamaha employee Christmas party was off the hook last year, I had a lot of fun. The R3 is outdated, that's just a fact. Other than the CBR-300R or the GSX-250R, the R3 is pretty much at the bottom of the pack when it comes to entry-level sport bikes. There are bikes like the Ninja 500, the RC390, the 450SS, and even the RS457 that all offer a bit more power, more usable torque, better tech, and more high-end features. The R3 remains a beginner bike staple, but one can't help but notice it's pretty much been unchanged since it launched in 2015 when I started riding. Despite the styling update it received most recently, it has the same 321cc parallel twin and the same suspension and braking components. They finally added a slipper clutch, which is nice, I guess, but it doesn't conjure the same degree of excitement that some of the new entry-level sport bikes do. Considering Yamaha is often on the cutting edge with motorcycles like the R7 and the R9 becoming new benchmarks in this respective new supersport category, you'd think the R3 would see some love as well, but hey, I guess it's better than the MT-03. Thanks so much for making it all the way to the end of the video. What are some other outdated motorcycles I forgot to mention? Do bikes need to constantly be innovating or improving, or is it all feigned advancement solely for advancement's sake? It seems like we're hearing of more and more people just wanting classic tried and true designs with no fluff. They say, I don't want all that crap to break on my bike. If that's the case, consider this list a buying guide instead of a cautionary tale. Anyway, thanks again for watching. I truly do appreciate it. Fact: A rainbow on Venus is called a glory. And that's it. That's the end of the show. So if you wanna keep hanging out, check out this video over here. It's another high quality Yami Noob list video that you've come to know and love. Bye.